Hello and welcome. My name is Zafar Iqbal and you are watching the Mojo Story. Kashmiri separatist leader Yasin Malik was sentenced to life by a Delhi court on Wednesday. The court awarded two life sentences and a 10-year sentence each in five other cases. Now, all punishments will run concurrently. Uh, uh, Basically, the lawyer who attended the court proceedings said in the courtroom that Yasin said, I quote, that I have been involved in any terrorist activity or violence in 28 years. If Indian intelligence proves this, then I will also retire from politics. Uh, on the demand of NIA for the death penalty, he said, I will not beg for anything. Yasin Malik had said reportedly, the case is before the court and I leave it to the court to decide it. Now we got an eminent panel to discuss this issue with us. We're joined by Farooq Wani, who's a senior journalist based in Kashmir. He's the editor of Brighter Kashmir. We've got Major General Dhruv Katoj, uh, who joins us also. He's the director, India Foundation. And we've got Ajay Shukla, a senior journalist who has been covering Kashmir story for a long time. If I can start with you, Ajay Shukla, what is your first reaction uh, after today's development, today's verdict?
Zafar, what reaction sort of I have is one which most people who have been following Kashmir over the years will have. And that is that this is a political step, a political gesture by the government. It is not an economic offense only or just a law and order offense. This is an offense that goes deep into the heart of what is happening in Kashmir today, and it's very largely a political sort of gesture on the part of the government that we are not going to be show any mercy to people who support terrorists, people who have operated as terrorists. And that is what sort of the first thing that strikes me is that this is a political gesture that has been made.
Major General Dhruv Katoj, it's a political gesture. Your thoughts?
Well, actually, I look at it in a slightly different way. The way I have viewed it is that justice has been delivered 32 years late. Now, there are 2 points I want to make here. One, theoretically, just let us take theoretically, had this justice been delivered 30 years ago, would Kashmir have gone through the same phase of terrorism? That is question number one. And in my view, because I believe it is not so much eliminating the terrorist as getting them to a court of justice and putting them through a trial and punishing them as per law, which is the real deterrent. And that has to be done within a reasonable span of time. Now, in this particular case, it was not done. But now that it has been done, I hope the process continues and it is not confined to a one off situation. We need to go much, much further ahead because it is not just Yasin Malik who is the guilty party. There are many people who were part of the pogrom of killing the Hindus in the Kashmir Valley. And for the people, if you really want peace to come to the valley, both for the Muslims and the Hindus and for all other communities which are living there, I think the bedrock of that peace can only come through delivery of justice, which is fair. Now, in this particular case, I think to some extent the wounds have been assuaged. Okay, at least the start has been made. For the Kashmiri
Okay.
Hindus, there will be the feeling something is being done. But a great
No.
deal, much more needs to be done, and we need to take this forward much more. These are my initial.
Major General Dhruv Katoj, this is a case related to terror funding of 2017. So this is a recent sort of a case. It doesn't pertain to the cases in the 90s. So we have to be clear on that. There is a separate process going on in the CBI court in Jammu regarding the case of Rubia Said or the killing of the Air Force personnel. But I want to get Farooq Sahab in this. Farooq Sahab, आपका क्या कहना है?
See, Zafar Saab, so you have invited me in this show. I'm very thankful to you, but my concern is something different because the judgment came in such a time and such a day when the Kashmir is taking a strong roots in regard the development. And second thing, the tourism influxes are very high this time in the Kashmir is because due to pandemic and some economically defended this tourism now it has clicked a lot because every day the airport is receiving to and fro 100 and or 100 plus flights, so it means that there's a huge influx of tourists. But this the judgment of the Yasin Malik, it was so it when he has pleaded his guilty, and the judgment came in his favor because he has been awarded a lifer, so he has to spend his life in life. But one thing is clear, and there is some sort of uneasiness in the Srinagar city, especially in the Maisuma area. And plus now the government has now just I was going the government has just snapped this mobile services in some parts of the Kashmir because to prevent any unruly action. So my concern is regarding this Yasin Malik Saab. Yasin Malik is given a lifer, and he has to spend life in the jail.
Okay, you raised the issue of tourism and life uh, being completely normal in Kashmir, and this could rather uh, act as a blow to that. And for the benefit of our viewers, Yasin Malik lives in Maisuma, which is really in the heart of Srinagar city. Even before the verdict, there were people who came out on the roads and who sort of there was a procession of sorts, and people were really protesting there. But Ajay Shukla, coming to you, I remember after Burhan Wani's killing, you were in the valley. We met at that point in time. You were exclusively covering that story. Uh, it has uh, far greater repercussions on the ground. Some of the indications, as Farooq sir was saying, that people watch these incidents very keenly in the valley, and then this pans out over a period of time.
Yes, that is absolutely so. There is, I would say, Zafar, since the change of status of Jammu and Kashmir that was carried out in August 2019, there has been an even greater sort of wariness on the part of the ground level people, the Kashmiri people. Uh, they realize that there is a sort of a great downside to street violence, and the people who normally get killed in these street violence incidents are people from the local community itself. So before they actually take any measures to protest, they weigh very carefully now the consequences of that, and the consequences, as the government has proven, will be sort of harsher than it was in earlier days. So the it after the August 2019 sort of change of status, everybody was expecting a big reaction from the ground in Kashmir. But the average Kashmiri apparently decided during that phase that he would be the loser or she would be the loser, rather than conveying any point or protest to the government. So they held back and they did not protest to the extent that the central government had anticipated and prepared for that matter. So I think it will be the same in this particular case. I don't foresee a huge sort of surge of ground level violence taking place. The Kashmiri will watch developments very carefully, and in any case, as far as Yasin Malik is concerned, he spent so much of his recent time in jail that giving him a jail sentence is hardly going to change a status.
See any security implications on the ground. We know that militant operations are still going on, operations against militancy. Even today, there were three militants who were killed in Baramulla, but there aren't any street protests, as Ajay was saying. There was not a sort of a eruption after the August 2019 move, but before that, we have seen such things happening after Burhan Wani, and even before that in 2008 during the Amarnath. land agitation, and 2010 also. How do you see this impacting on the ground, if at all?
That's for me.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't see this impacting on the ground. I agree with Ajay totally on this. You see, one of the reasons what has happened in my own analysis post 5th August 2019 is there were certain linkages which were existing between Pakistan and the Indian terrorist organizations. Those linkages have been cut, especially as far as the Hurriyat was concerned. There were linkages between the Hurriyat and the political parties. They have been weakened. And the ground level workers who were giving support, they have been weakened considerably. And if you wish to create chaos on the streets, you require an organization. You require money power, you require organization, and you can organize it. It doesn't have to be Srinagar. You can organize it in Delhi or you can organize it in any part of the country. There are certain factors that go into such organization. I don't see that happening in Kashmir now. I think there is a change. While
Yeah.
radicalization has seeped in for a very long time, the process starting in the 60s, and to get down to a normal society, I think it may take at least one generation from now. Let's be honest about it. But I think when we're looking at the people in the valley, I think many of them are inclined now to say, listen, what has happened so far is not going to is only going to be detrimental to my interest and to the interest of my future generations. So
Okay, okay.
I think
Farooq Saab may like to come in. Could it be lull before the storm? फारूक साहब, हमने देखा कि जो कश्मीर के नेता है खासकर, उनका कुछ खास बयान नहीं आया अभी तक इस डेवलपमेंट पे. हालांकि महबूबा मुफ्ती has spoken about this. If we can use that sound bite before Farooq Saab can come in.
हाँ, तो
Yes,
ये तो मैंने
so
पहले भी कहा, एक सियासी मसला है जम्मू कश्मीर. यहाँ पहले भी कई लोगों को फांसी दी गई, उम्र कैद हो गई, फांसी हो गई. उससे तो मसले कश्मीर हल नहीं हुआ बल्कि और उलझ गया. तो मैं तो समझती हूँ कि ये जो इनकी मस्कुलर पॉलिसी है गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की, इसके नताइज बरक्स होंगे. इसके नताइज अच्छे नहीं होंगे बल्कि इससे हालात जो है दिन ब दिन खराब होते जा रहे हैं. मसला सुलझने के बजाय मसला उलझ रहा है.
फारूक साहब.
Zafar Saab, what is my concern is that these political leaders in Kashmir, especially the Gupkar alliance, they are trying hard to capture the ground because they have already lost it. If you go after this abrogation of Article 370, but they have lost the ground. Now they are trying what is they are doing because they want to just gain the popularity and some. This is a vote bank politics, but people hardly matters for these statements. But one thing is certain: that Yasin Malik, who was a strong supporter and a strong believer of a Gandhi ideology. Now an error to human, but what he has done, maybe he was involved in such acts, but किसी से भी गलती लग सकती है, लेकिन at least at the end of a day he should be pardoned for this. But when the honorable court has given the verdict, we must accept that for the big. And there are a lot of other courts where he can try his case.
He can appeal in a higher court. He can appeal in the
Yes.
higher court, and I
Yeah,
suppose even the NIA can go to a higher court. But you raise the important point that he is saying that he has been following the Gandhian way after '94 when he laid down the gun. He's not into violence as he's been following the Gandhian way. But this is a terror funding case. So, Ajay, do you think that making any difference in the end?
Well, it's in a lot of sort of political sort of environments when the judiciary is functioning in, then it is never the exact sort of facts of the case or the sort of even what kind of case it is. These are all just sort of accompaniments to the theater of what is actually playing out on the ground. And my sort of view would be, and I'm sure that the people of Kashmir also would share this view, they would always measure or evaluate what is happening in the backdrop of the sort of the struggle that the Kashmiri people have waged. So I think that this is, as I mentioned earlier, a strong political dimension to this case. It's not just about terror financing, not just about Air Force people being killed. It's about the larger theater of Kashmir and the larger sort of backdrop in which this sentencing is taking place.
But for those who have been the victims, it's some sort of a wheels of justice have started moving or a direction towards a closure. Nirmal Khanna, who is the wife of the Air Force officer Ravi Khanna, who is one of those four officers who was killed in the early 90s, earlier spoke to the media in Jammu. This is before the verdict. If you can use that soundbite.
आपका दुश्मन जरूरी नहीं मेरा दुश्मन हो, हर एक को अपना अपना रिश्ता निभाना है, हर एक को जो जो जिसने फायदा लिया हुआ है, जमीर में कहीं तो तकलीफ होती होगी कि हमने भी फायदा तो उठाया, सजा तो ये उठा रहा है। तो अगर वो आवाज उठा रहे हैं, जो भी कुछ कर रहे हैं, ये उनका, मुझे इन बातों से कोई लेन देन नहीं है। मुझे हिंदुस्तान की जुडिशरी से पूरी उम्मीद है कि जस्टिस होगा, और मुझे हिंदुस्तान की हुकूमत से, जबकि 32 साल 4 महीने हो गए, मेरा केस तो बाद में आया, 19 ये 17 का है टेरर फंड, मेरा तो 19 का इन्होंने उस टाइम इस केस को फाइल किया है। तो चार्जशीट तो बहुत पहले की लग चुकी हुई थी, तो हुकूमत ने क्यों नहीं कुछ किया? मैं तो ये कहती हूँ कि ये तो पीछे वाले केस की सुनवाई हो रही है, अभी हमारे वाले केस में पता नहीं कितनी गवाहियां हैं, कितना क्या कुछ है, ये सब कुछ सामने आएगा। तो गॉड विलिंग, मुझे तो पूरा भरोसा है कि यासीन मलिक के साथ इंसाफ होगा। वो इंसाफ ये होगा कि यहाँ पर सिर्फ सजा है इस प्लेनेट पे। मैं पहले भी कह चुकी, मैं अपने लिए भी ये दुआ करती हूँ कि अगर कोई गुनाह करती हूँ तो या रब मुझे इसी जगह मेरा आगे कैरी फॉरवर्ड ना हो, यहीं पे सजा दे, और आगे तुम मुझे कबूल कर लेना।
Major General Dhruv Katot, you heard her.
I totally support her. You see, you can only get closure once there is justice. Now, I have interviewed a many large number of people from the Bangladesh, from Bangladesh. We've interacted over the last 10 years. And one complaint each officer has till date, they said, why didn't the Indian Army hand over those officers who had murdered our people, who had committed genocide? That closure still has to take place. Now, Sheikh Hasina took some steps, and some of them have been charged. 40 years later, the process started. But I think we need to get to the bottom of this. We cannot say, okay, 30 years have elapsed. Now this man has reformed. He's taken the name of God and all that, and he's become a good fellow. It doesn't matter. He has to pay for his sins. But more importantly, there are many others who have to pay for their sins. They must be brought to justice. And once you bring them to justice, then the victims get closure. I think this justice, you take away justice, you are going to have a repetition of genocide. Please remember, and I'm making this statement very seriously, why do genocides take place? We ignored the genocide in 1947. We ignored the genocide which took place in 1971.
No,
and that is why you had the genocide in
but Major
1990.
General Dhruv Katot, we have seen these surrender policies earlier. There are opportunities given to people, not just in Kashmir, but elsewhere also. If they lay down the arms and if they come to the mainstream, they will be given a chance to live a normal life. What happens to that? Isn't there a mismatch here?
No, there is a difference. You see, there are certain crimes which are committed which are inexcusable. Even I've also been in Mizoram. I've studied that entire case. I spent 2 years there as a commander.
Yeah.
Now, even in Mizoram, when the accord took place and Lal Denga was sworn in as the chief minister, the people who had committed heinous crimes, they weren't part of that. So people have to go through it. You see, if you're fighting for your freedom and if you're fighting in a particular manner, that should be all right. But beyond that, when you commit crimes of the heinous nature for which Yasin Malik is responsible, and so are many others. I would also say, when you take a person like Farooq Abdullah, who was the chief minister at that time, he stands complicit, and he also must be tried for genocide. I'm very serious about it. You see, if you want closure, if you don't want it to happen in future, then please go the whole way. Otherwise, it will happen again, and it will happen in your and my lifetime.
We don't have a representative of NC, but Farooq Abdullah's government had probably resigned before the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits happened. But Farooq Sahab, what do you?
May I just make one statement?
Yes.
resigning 24 hours before the exodus doesn't mean that
Okay,
he had 5 years to sort it out. He did nothing. He closed his
okay,
eyes. He's complicit.
राइट। फारूक साहब, आपको क्या लगता है कि जिस तरह से अब ये केस आया है, हमने देखा कुछ मासूमा के प्रोटेस्ट भी हुए, अब क्या लगता है, आप बोल रहे थे कि टूरिज्म अभी काफी ज्यादा पिक गया, पिछले कई सालों से जितना टूरिज्म नहीं है वो इस साल टूरिज्म है, तो आपको लगता है इसका कोई इम्पैक्ट हो सकता है जमीन पर?
नहीं इतना मतलब अगर देखिए यहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट ने इतना मतलब गवर्नमेंट हैज टेकन such a measures to curb all this violence and other things. Even I have earlier told you that even some in Kashmir, in some parts of Kashmir, mobile net has been snapped, and so I don't think it will affect us to a large extent. But something there will be anger among the people, especially those fellows who are connected with this Yasin Malik, and in the area of Maismo where from he hails. So I don't think it will not affect such, because already there are a lot of separatists. They are languishing in the jail because of their terror funding and what the government is saying. So I don't think it will not affect to a large extent.
Ajay, I want to ask you this question. We've been seeing statements coming from Pakistan. Even today, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari tweeted after the sentencing. This is his tweet, and even before that, we've been seeing statements coming from Pakistani leader Imran Khan, others. They have been speaking uh, about this issue particularly. Do you think already strained relations between India and Pakistan, how is it going to, is it going to cause more strain in the relation, or they are already strained? How does it matter? Or will it have any impact on Indo-Pak relations?
No, I don't think it'll have any impact, nor does any statement that Pakistan makes in this regard have any substantive effect on the ground.
Yeah,
Pakistan is scoring propaganda points. Pakistan always does score propaganda points on Kashmir, but that does not necessarily translate into hard action on the ground or a change of Indian policy based on what Pakistan is saying. That would amount to giving too much to Pakistan in terms of their purported influence in the valley. So I
yeah.
don't go very much by what Pakistan is saying, but I think there's one point that we do need to also consider at this stage, Zafar, and that is whether punishment in a situation and a case like this in Kashmir, where there is a victim at every corner, uh, is it a strictly a sort of a situation in which punishment contributes retribution, which has to do with also not just punishing the person, but providing sort of a salve and comfort to the people who were at the receiving end of what has happened, like this lady whose husband was killed when he was in the Air Force. Or should punishment be seen in another light, which is the light of peace and reconciliation,
Okay.
like in South Africa, which is another
Yeah.
place where many people were killed. Many people, there are killers at every corner and victims at every corner. They decided to adopt a policy of peace and retribution, and not just of strict deliverance of justice. I think that's a very important point that has to govern the Indian government's sort of approach to punishment in Kashmir. And so far, I don't think it's done a lot to think about this.
That was perhaps the approach, but after 2019, we're seeing a change in the approach. Maybe Major General Dhruv Katoj can throw some light on that.
A change in what? Sorry.
After 2019, we're seeing a different sort of an approach.
Oh, you see,
As far as, yeah,
no, okay.
yeah,
No, let me give you my view or my take of it.
yes,
This
yes,
entire Kashmir problem,
yeah,
some part of it is, of course, originated in Kashmir, but a major portion of it lies abroad. So unless you address the key instigators, which lie in Pindi, the problem in Kashmir remains unaddressed to a very large extent. Because so long as there is external support and we have got common borders, it is very difficult to extinguish a problem. Now, 5th August 2019 was the first attempt made to connect, to sever those linkages. And I think to a very large extent that has been successful. And in my own reading and in my interaction with many of these people from the other side, from the Pakistani side, they are really caught in a bind. They don't know how to go ahead now, how to continue with the movement, because the support, the access which they had earlier, that access is now denied. So I think it is important now to continue with this development program, but to really address the problem at its source, that is Pakistan, and how to do that is a different can be discussed in a different form.
Perhaps that's a different approach to what Ajay was pointing at. But of course, all of this is happening. That brings us to the end of this discussion. Thanks to all our guests for joining us. That's all we have in today's show. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.